Hello readers by eyes and by ears, this is Mari Chan and welcome back to my channel. Today we are continuing with another reading of Ballad of Sword and Wine, Volume 8, also known as Tang Jiu by Tang Jiu Qing. For sure we are covering chapters 274 through 275. Don't know if we're going to add on 276, but we shall see. Nevertheless, let us go ahead and begin. I hope you all enjoy. Chapter 274, Unveil. The Mongloid tribe's territory was close to a copse of desert poplars with vibrant red leaves. From a distance, they looked like they lived in an inextinguishable bonfire in the middle of the desert. The desert poplar was their symbol. They occupied this tributary of the Chasha River, the only source of water in 3 rivers. To the east was barren desert, nothing but sand and sweltering heat. It was here Bayir hosted a feast for Xiao Chuye. The chief of the Mongloid tribe was a heavy-set man who had grown himself a grizzled goatee. He personally filled Xiao Chuye's cup and said, "I've heard of the legend of the wolf. Your armored cavalry is as cold as a hard frost, stampeding through the Chasha's sinkhole and crushing Achi's elite scorpions." They feasted in the open air, bathed in moonlight. The desert sky at night was not black, but a rich, deep blue. Even sitting, Xiao Chuye's aura was different from the fierceness of the Bianxia men. He possessed the coldness, arrogance, and carelessness of a noble from Libei, an attitude all the more conspicuous after he removed his armor. "I thank the Mongloid tribe for their praise. I'm willing to form an alliance with you and become brothers who rely on each other, just as we are with the Huiyan tribe," says Xiao Chuye. "In that case, why not a marriage alliance?" Bayir looked at Xiao Chuye and sighed. "A good man born in the Hongyan Mountains. I know you men from Libei are all tough. I truly admire you, and my daughter wishes to marry you. If you're worried your wife at home won't agree, I'm willing to present 500 camels as a gift to appease your mistress of the house." It was women who controlled the household's material wealth in the 12 tribes. As far as Bayir was concerned, if Xiao Chuye's wife was a sensible person, then for a gift like that, she should agree to the marriage for the sake of her husband. Far away in Danchang, Shilzichuan sneezed quietly. Holding a bowl of medicine, Jikang called from the outer chamber. "Chuanar, take your medicine on time. This weather changes on a whim. If you are not careful, you'll get a cough again." Xiao Chuye took up the wine Bayir had poured for him. He held his liquor better than most, even sipping on horseback to quench his thirst on the way over. No one could drink him under the table back home. Yet now, he seemed to be drunk. His expression was softer than the last time he met with Bayir. It gave Bayir an illusion of opportunity. He motioned for Xiao Chuye to look to his right, where his young daughter, her face obscured by a thin veil, sat with her head shyly lowered. Bayir was confident that the Zhou Empire had no girls like her. "My Uya is sweet and obedient. She'll care for your wife as a younger sister would." Lu Guangbai cast a glance at Xiao Chuye as he cut his beef. "Our mistress has no brothers. A younger sister might be a good idea." Xiao Chuye's gaze followed Bayir's pointing figure, and the girl hung her head even lower. "Uya," Bayir said, "come over and toast the leader of the wolf pack." Uya rose from her seat. The tinkling of the intricate ornaments at her waist instantly sent Xiao Chuye's mind wandering. He recalled the lesson he had taught Lanzhou and Dunzhou. He had hung a gleaming bell on Lanzhou's ankle that had tinkled when it moved, the sweet sound accompanying Lanzhou's desperate, heedless gasps. Uya came to stand before Xiao Chuye. An exotic fragrance hung about her, and when she leaned over, it revealed the fair skin of her neck. Lanzhou's neck was most gorgeous when it was drenched in the rain, soaking in water and shimmering with sweat. The arch of it was exquisite, curving up or down as his body was held captive. Xiao Chuye missed Shangzichuan terribly, especially now. Uya filled a golden goblet to the brim and offered up a toast to Xiao Chuye, but when her long lashes lifted to look at him, her eyes flashed with hatred. The golden chain around her waist clinked as the girl drew a dagger with her slender hand and thrust it toward Xiao Chuye's throat. This turn of events was so sudden that Chen Yang hadn't had an instant to react. But Gujin, having heard the discordant jangle of her chain, lurched forward and blurted, "Arya!" The goblet dropped onto the tabletop, splashing wine everywhere. Xiao Chuye didn't touch the girl as he parried her dagger with his arm guard. The table overturned with a crash, and Uya went rolling with it. The hilt of her dagger slipped from her hand and landed in Xiao Chuye's. Before Bai Ye could recover from the shock, Xiao Chuye stood and nailed the dagger onto Bai Ye's table a hair's breadth from his hand. Bai Ye's face turned pale from panic, and he fell to the ground, lucky to still have all his fingers. Xiao Chuye wiped away the wine that had splashed onto his arm guard, his eyes clear and sober as he said frostily, "I came here sincerely to befriend the Monglor tribe, but the Monglor tribe are not the camels they claim to be. They are hypocritical rats who speak honeyed words while hiding swords behind their backs." The other generals at the feast all jolted to their feet. Armored cavalrymen within and without flashed their blades, filling the crimson poplar forest with snow-white light. Tension crackled in the air. "No!" Bai Ye had never expected his daughter to do such a rash thing. "This wasn't at my behest. Please, King of Wolves, do not be angry." He clambered to his feet and stumped his foot at Uya. "I've raised you all these years, and yet this is how you repay me." Uya had lost her veil in the fall. Rearing up, she spat at Bai Ye. "You betrayed the Esahuri and offered me to Hassan's mortal enemy. You are not worthy to be my father." Enraged, Bai Ye slapped Uya so hard she fell back to the ground. Switching to the Biansha tongue, he snapped, "Hold her down!" He turned to plead with Xiao Chuye. "She has been bewitched by Amour and has lost her mind. She is no longer my daughter. I'm willing to kill her today in front of you. Please don't punish the Monglor tribe." Damn. Xiao Chuye's expression didn't change in the slightest. The Libe armored cavalry had by now surrounded the Monglor tribe. Bai Ye's elites had all been pushed to the periphery. If a genuine fight were to break out, what few people he had wouldn't even slow down the assault of Libe's fully armored forces. Bai Ye had no more power to negotiate. All he could do was draw his guard saber and raise it high over his daughter. The pale moonlight hung high in the sky, where a single Saker falcon circled overhead. The towering branches of the desert poplar slanted across the moon, while the wind sent Libe's wolf banner snapping. Bai Ye held the saber aloft, unable to bring himself to strike. His goatee trembled, and amid the sound of Uya's sobs, he flung down the saber and dropped to his knees before Xiao Chuye. Xiao Chuye secured his arm guard tightly. Behind him, Chunyang stepped forward to drape his cloak over his shoulders. Setting a hand on the hilt of Wolf's Fang, Xiao Chuye looked down at Bai Ye. "I have only one daughter." Tears streamed down Bai Ye's aged face. "Because we make our home here, the Monglor tribe has always faced harassment from the other tribes, so I wanted to betroth her to the powerful king of wolves in Libe. Amour is old. Who can ensure our survival?" "Keep your 500 camels." Xiao Chuye turned to leave. "Save them to use in the Monglor tribe's trade market." Xiao Chuye took a few steps, then looked sidelong at Uya. The night breeze stirred the little braid that had fallen down along Xiao Chuye's shoulder. He yanked the dagger out of the table and tossed it before her. "You were the one who handed me the lives of the entire Monglor tribe tonight." Uya's face had turned a ghastly white. The tantalizing fragrance on her had dissipated. She covered her face and wept. Bai Ye prostrated himself on the ground and proclaimed, "The Monglor tribe will follow the king of wolves across the vast desert." Xiao Chuye whistled, and Meng landed on his shoulder. He looked ahead, where the entrance to 3 rivers lay open before him. Moonlight paved a narrow passage leading to his destination. Behind him, the wolf banner of Libe rose in the place of the eagle banner of the desert. "How did you guess Uya would try to assassinate you?" Lu Guangbai asked as he walked beside Xiao Chuye. "You said Bai Ye wanted to marry her to Hassan." Xiao Chuye swung astride his horse. He pulled on the reins and paused for a moment. "I guessed it had been Uya's own wish. Bai Ye was so desperate to marry her to me because she no longer had eyes for any other young men in the desert. I was wondering if you were really drunk, the way you were looking at her." Lu Guangbai followed suit and mounted his own horse. "My heart was in my throat the whole time, worried you lose your head. Say, when I return, should I be honest in my report to his lordship, or should I leave out a few things?" "I won't lose my head." Who else in the world could compare to Shenlan Zhou? Xiao Chuye turned his horse, letting the wind disperse the heat of the wine. He glanced at Lu Guangbai and said solemnly, "Neither wine nor fragrance work on me. My mind is clear." Lu Guangbai saw how serious he looked and believed it to be true. He couldn't know that in those perilous moments, Xiao Chuye had been awash in immodest thoughts about Shenlan Zhou. Xiao Chuye changed the subject. If the Mongol tribe stays out of it, only the Hulu tribe will still be supplying Amur with grain east of the Three Rivers. Dorlan brought the remaining warriors of the Yoxiong tribe to support Amur, but even with them, Amur doesn't have many elites left. Huhalu, Achi, Jorl, Hassan, Amur's advanced raider, guard, and general had all been killed in battle. The 6 tribes under him had been on edge since Xiao Chuye began his eastern advance. The Mongol tribe was willing to enter an alliance with him in order to preserve their own lives. His target now was Amur's golden yurt in the heart of the desert. Xiao Chuye wanted a clean victory, determined in one battle. After Hassan's death, Biansha had withdrawn their troops east. In the past, the Zhou Empire had never pursued their enemy beyond the boundary of the Chashi River, but to Xiao Chuye, even if everyone else could be spared, Amur must not live. As the only man who had nearly become the great king of the 12 tribes, Amur was a formidable figure who could fight on equal footing with Xiao Fangshu. What made him more dangerous than Hassan was that he also knew how to play politics. He wanted to do more than fight victorious battles, something he had long delegated to the others. He had spent 20 years painstakingly orchestrating the collapse of a dynasty. Should he be given the opportunity to catch his breath, he would hatch new plans, and his methods would only become more sophisticated and harder to detect. The man must die, or Xiao Chuye would never sleep easy. Amur sat on his throne in the golden yurt of the leader of the desert. The flaps hung open, and moonlight shone through the gaps to spill at his feet. He gazed out at the rolling sand dunes. "Many years ago," Amur said in a quiet voice, "I led my troops deep into the Zhou Empire, where I met Xiao Fangshu at the foot of the Hongyan Mountains. At that time, I was still a nameless foot soldier. I regarded him as my lifelong adversary. I've beaten him many times, and I've lost to him many times." The aged wise man who had prayed for Hassan's victory sat in the corner of Amur's golden yurt. The withered branch in his hand dropped onto the rug before his knees. In a trembling voice he said, "You defeated him." In the silver glow of the moonlight, Amur closed his eyes. There was no sign of his age on his face. He looked so dignified that it was as if he'd just ascended the throne. "It was my son who killed him." "And his son killed your son," the wise man wheezed as he prostrated over the woolen rug. After taking a moment to catch his breath, he pushed away the withered twigs. "But you still have a grandson. Darlan will bear Hassan a strong, healthy child. We haven't lost this war." Amur gripped the armrests of his throne, looking like a beast lashed down to the seat. His eyes twitched beneath his lids. Eventually, he opened them to look out again at the unchanging dunes. "You said the same thing when I dispatched troops to Luoxia Pass. We walked out of the desert, looking for land we could survive on. But in all these years, the war has never ceased, while the dead have piled high. The Zhou Empire is a tree that has decayed, yet the favor of the heavenly god still does not tilt toward us. Li Bei lost Xiao Fangshu, but in a heartbeat they anointed a new king of wolves. I hear him beating his battle drums as he marches toward my golden yurt. He is younger and stronger than Xiao Fangshu. You were the last ray of morning light our god has bestowed upon the desert," the wise man said staunchly, gathering up those withered twigs. "I shall watch you grind this wolf into dust." Amur rose from his throne and stepped out, following the trail of the moon. "It's time for the scorpions to move." The wardrobe attendant packed up the cotton-padded coats and hats for Feng Quan and offered him a paper napkin from the bamboo tray. Feng Quan wiped his hands and waited for the attendant to speak. The man moved deftly, partially concealed by the darkness. "Zhongbo must be defeated before the gates of Chudu. Only with the demise of Shenzhen can the dynasty continue to linger on the verge of death as the sun in the east rises again." "Shenzhen has encountered danger repeatedly in Duanzhou and Duanzhou." Feng Quan watched the attendant hanging the clothes up for scenting with incense overnight. He said quietly, "You people have had countless opportunities to kill him, but never managed to do it." "He is tougher than expected." The wardrobe attendant put away Feng Quan's shoes. He knelt and stared up at Feng Quan. "You know that." Feng Quan bent over and enunciated each word. "You are all useless." The flame of the lamp flickered as silence descended over the duty room. I told you 2 years ago not to act rashly, yet you spread that pox in Chudu and gave Shen Zichuan the opportunity to be promoted, Feng Chuan said darkly. Amor thinks he has the whole game board in sight, but in truth, that man can't see a thing. The wardrobe attendant suddenly straightened and slapped his palm against Feng Chuan's leg. He held a long, thin earpick between his fingers. That sharp, unexpected object pressed against Feng Chuan's leg, proclaiming its lethality. Enough! The attendant's light brown eyes were fixed on Feng Chuan. The epidemic also gave Muzhu her opportunity. Xue Zhuo trusts you today only because you were able to profess your loyalty during that crisis. Now you are standing at the center of everything, and the Emperor herself is within your reach. After this battle, you will be free. Feng Chuan's frigid gaze fixed upon the attendant. He didn't believe a single word of these lies. Since the day he had first fled Chudu, he had been locked in a box, destined never to escape for the rest of his life. Your foolish father is dead. You could have stopped him, but you didn't. The official tucked away the earpick. I told no one of this. Do you understand? Feng Chuan's pale face had taken on a sickly cast in the glow of the lamp. He's not a scorpion. No one could manipulate him. He had gone mad long ago, willing to die for forgotten promises. I merely sent him on his way. You let him take the muskets. Feng Chuan's eyelids twitched, but he maintained his composure as he brushed aside the man's hand. Since he wanted to die, there was no harm in letting him take the counterfeits, was there? You're right. Xiao Chengbi was a lunatic. He kept vigil at the Temple of Guilt day and night, and kept an altar at home to pray for forgiveness. To let him die is to fulfill his long-held wish. You are nothing if not a filial son. The wardrobe attendant tidied his robe and stood. It's time to take your medicine. Chapter 275. Gamble. Chudu in the 11th month was dreary under an unbroken spell of wet weather. Defensive weapons clustered all along the city walls. The capital troops held themselves apart from the ragtag band of soldiers Luo Mu had brought from Chazhou, creating a distinct division between the two. When Luo Mu stepped into Chudu, he was no longer the obsequious and servile man he had been a few years ago. Chudu now depended on him for support. Chunjun personally came to greet him when he entered the city. Now he wore a brand-new official's robe as he stood atop the city wall with Chunjun and looked out into the distance toward Dancheng, holding an umbrella against the drizzle. The other 7 cities' garrison troops are being transferred back to Chudu. They should be here in the next few days. We can assemble 50,000 soldiers for you. Chunjun braced his hands on the battlement, huffing white clouds into the cold air. The capital troops' armory will be made available to you too. Defend the walls for as long as you can. Luo Mu might have been a civil official, but when he was sent to Chazhou, he had reorganized the city's armory and fought the local bandits. He was no stranger to military affairs. Hands steady on the umbrella, he said. Shen Zichuan is no general. He defended Duanzhou only because he had no choice. With only 20,000 Duanzhou garrison troops under his command, it would be impossible for him to breach Chudu. Chudu had sealed the city gate on the east side, where the commoners who had fled Dancheng were all gathered. As Chunjun and Luo Mu spoke, they looked down toward the foot of the city wall, packed with refugees. There's one thing I'd like to ask you to report to Her Majesty. Luo Mu pointed down at the milling commoners. Shen Zichuan has a habit of buying the hearts of the people. If these refugees cannot enter the city and find a place to settle down, then once the snow falls, he will think of a way to aid them, then use the opportunity to spread word of his benevolence to all the sundry. When that happens, it will be a blow to the imperial court. Cai Yu had lost to Shen Zichuan and Chazhou because of this so-called benevolence. He who rescued another from certain death was as good as a second parent, giving them a fresh chance at life. Using this tactic, Shen Zichuan had even cleared himself of the stain of Shen Wei's defeat. So why shouldn't Chudu follow his example? In Juexi, they were still talking about Shen Zichuan's timely aid to drought-stricken Yongcheng. If Chudu couldn't turn the tables before winter, they would lose this battle before a single soldier drew his blade. In your opinion, Chunjun said with a look at Luo Mu, what should we do? Chudu is already overcrowded. There are people sleeping in the public ditches on Donglong Street. If we take in any more refugees, we will be breaking the regulations of the Yamen in Chudu. Even if we welcome them, we can't afford to feed them. Take in the refugees we can use, Luomu said. Look, most of them are young and strong. Why not enlist them into the army? If they can inflict a crushing defeat on Zhongbo, the imperial court will not skimp on their reward. What's this bit of grain today? If everyone tightens their belts, there will be enough to go around. Luomu didn't balk at making such a bold suggestion. After all, he had already borrowed grain from his own men when he had marched through Huzhou. Look, Your Excellency. Luomu raised his hand and pointed east. Suzhou is critical to Shen Sichuan's plans. He established a large granary there on the trade route between Huaizhou, Cizhou, and Chazhou, which allows him to supply to the northeast provisions trail to the north and provide relief for Chazhou's natural disasters to the south. If we can wrest Cizhou from his control, it will be a massive victory for us. His deployment to Dancheng has already stirred panic and unease among the cities in the west. But even he will need time to regroup. He can't act rashly. We are different. Whenever we wish, we can send our troops out to crush the rebels. We merely lack the right opportunity. Chunjun looked at Luomu. This opportunity has been difficult to find. Not as hard as you think. After all, Shen Sichuan is Shen Wei's son. He enters Chudu with his eyes on the throne. If he succeeds, the most condemned sinner of our age, Shen Wei, will be enshrined and worshipped in the imperial ancestral temple. Luomu looked back at Chunjun and smiled. Who would agree to that? Persuasion? Li Jianting glanced over her shoulder. We are at war. If something happens to the students, how will you answer for it? Your Majesty. Luomu prostrated himself on the wool carpet. Shen Sichuan is shrewd and sophisticated. He is certain to have a plan to win the hearts of the people. If we merely sit still and resign ourselves to fate, the situation may devolve rapidly. At that point, it will be difficult to recover. Furthermore, Jiang Wanxiao's negotiations with Qidong are also affected by the news out of Chudu. I believe a battle of words is our best course right now. Luomu hadn't mentioned the other important reason. As time went on, it was becoming increasingly difficult to convince the people of Li Jianting's legitimacy. If they dragged this out any longer, Gao Zhongxiong would surely deal them another blow. It would be too late then for Chudu to win back the hearts of the people of Dancheng, whom Shen Sichuan had mollified. Your Majesty, we have already lost the initiative in Dancheng, Chunjun put in. If we can score a victory without deploying a single soldier, it would do much to boost morale in Chudu. When facing a formidable enemy, we must unite against it, Kongqiu said after some contemplation. If we can stir the hearts of the common folk in the southwest, it won't be impossible to hold the line this winter. It is widely said in Chudu that Shen Sichuan is a petty and narrow-minded man, said Li Jianting. But that is only a rumor. The way he has behaved in Dancheng is unhurried and composed. If you're thinking of using words to goad him into deploying troops, it's unlikely to work. This isn't a trap meant for Shen Sichuan, said Luomu, composing himself and looking up, but for Yao Wenyu. Yao Wenyu was Shen Sichuan's strategist. Not only had he summoned the talented men of the world for Shen Sichuan, he had also played a pivotal role in implementing the census register in the 6 prefectures. More importantly, he had advised Shen Sichuan to take in all those former ministers from Chudu. Gao Zhongxiong and others like him had been granted a chance to shine, all thanks to Yao Wenyu's discerning eye. Without Yao Wenyu, Shen Sichuan's administration in Zhongbo would never have expanded to such proportions. Kongqiu and Sun Yu had both been students of Hailiang Yi. Hearing Luomu mention Yao Wenyu, they couldn't help but turn away. Even now, Sun Yu had sympathy for Yao Wenyu as a man of talent. He said, I hear Yuanzhuo has been in ill health ever since arriving in Zhongbo. If Lord Sun is right, Luomu said, we'll line up the scholars at the foot of the city walls to persuade them to surrender. If Yao Wenyu doesn't dare come forward to refute them, Zhongbo's morale will plummet, and Shen Sichuan will be seen as a coward. If Yao Wenyu does come, having to face his former home will surely quash his arrogance. Sun Yu jerked to his feet and pointed at Luomu. You're truly ruthless. Yao Wenyu was seriously ill, and dragging along 2 injured legs besides. By demanding that he make his way to the city wall to respond to the scholar's criticism, Luomu meant for him to face his former acquaintances and reveal his feeble state to the world. Look, As recently as 2 years ago, this man was still the unpolished jade renowned throughout the land. If we can deal a blow to Yao Wenyu, Luo Mu said, bowing deeply to him, Shen Zichuan will no doubt feel the effects. He did not spell out the details. The students would be unarmed when they faced off against tens of thousands of Zhongbo troops. If Yao Wenyu was humiliated by the students, the garrison troops would be indignant. Weapons had no eyes. The Duanzhou garrison troops only had to mistakenly injure the students in the heat of the moment, and Shen Zichuan's virtuous name would go up in smoke. Li Jianting examined Luo Mu. For a chance at victory, this man would go to such lengths and set such a vicious trap. He was truly perfidious and cold-hearted. Feng Quan snuck a sidelong glance at Xue Xiuzhuo, who had been keeping his head down at the back of the room. Not a moment later, just as Feng Quan expected, Luo Mu said, Lord Xue has always enjoyed a prestigious reputation among the students, and you studied in the same academy under the same teacher as Yao Wenyu. Your Excellency is the best candidate for this gambit. Xue Xiuzhuo stood up silently. Yao Wenyu has done so much to assist Shen Zichuan even with his broken legs and failing body. He is no longer merely a distinguished young master who frequents philosophical symposiums. In setting this trap, you actually want the whole world to watch former peers squabble vilely at each other's throats. He looked at Li Jianting. I do not agree. Feng Quan hid a small smile behind the business of pouring tea. Li Jianting gazed at Xue Xiuzhuo with an odd expression. In that moment of silence, she said reassuringly, Of course, we couldn't bear to subject you to such hardship either. There is still no news from Jiang Wanxiao. Let the Grand Secretariat choose some promising students for this match. Raindrops drummed against the eaves, their pattering giving rise to something else. Where exactly did you come from? This was what Li Jianting had asked Feng Quan that night. Kneeling in the fathomless shadows, Feng Quan had replied, This humble servant was originally the nephew of an official in Jincheng. The guilty former official, Shao Chengbi, was my maternal uncle. My mother's family was implicated in the incident and sent to an exile in Zhongbo, where I was born. Later, when Lord Yanting searched the land for former officials, he saved this humble servant from ruin and brought me back to Chudu. He raised his head and said, timid and a little helpless, My uncle and I were close as father and son, so I was willing to enter the palace in the hope of someday getting justice for him. Under the guidance of Lord Yanqing, I've served 2 emperors and 1 empress dowager in the palace, until your majesty. I've been most prudent. Xiande, Tianchun, the empress dowager, all dead in the struggle for power. Of them, the death of the Tianchun emperor, Li Jianheng, was most suspect. Muzhu's assassination of the emperor had been no secret in the Xue manor, yet Xue Xiuzhuo had never replaced Feng Quan, and still had him serve Li Jianting. You report all the minute details of my life to him. Li Jianting leaned closer. Is Xue Yanqing keeping an eye on me because he fears I won't do a good job as emperor? Feng Quan didn't dare answer. Li Jianting stared at him for a long time. Did Muzhu act on Han Chan's orders, or Xue Xiuzhuo's? Before Feng Quan could look away, Li Jianting gripped his chin and loomed close. He's been watching me ever since I entered the palace. Li Jianting laughed and said mockingly, No wonder he dares to be a lone minister. The life of the emperor is in his hands. It was a life Xue Xiuzhuo would relinquish without regret. He could bear to sacrifice even himself. Naturally, he could bear to sacrifice others. Shao Chengbi wants to overturn the verdict of that old case. Li Jianting released Feng Quan and said coldly, Only we can do that. Qi Shiyu laid on the bed. His hair had turned whiter. Illness had worn him down. There was no trace left of the man who had once spurred his horse tirelessly through Chudu or swept women off their feet with his charisma. Drool pooled at the corner of his lips. Qi Juyin wiped it with her handkerchief. Jiang, Qi Shiyu gasped. Jiang Guangxiao will arrive soon. Talk to him. We will send troops to Chudu. Qi Juyin rolled up her sleeves. Rinsing the handkerchief in the copper basin by the bed, she said, We'll see. Qi Shiyu's chest heaved as he turned his eyes to her. When you are celebrated for protecting the emperor, you Who will be the reign of Shangyin's 2 borders and 3 prefectures have already risen in revolt. Qi Juyin focused on washing the handkerchief. How long can the Shangyin emperor remain on her throne? With only 10,000 capital troops, she can't even step out from behind the walls of Chudu. Juyin, Qi Shuyu raised his voice. Unfilial daughter. Qi Juyin wrung out the handkerchief and said nothing. Tears soaked Qi Shuyu's temples. His lips quivered, and his next words were choked with sobs. You've ruined the T clan's name. After this, you won't even be able to be laid rest in the ancestral tomb. The setting sun at the window shone upon Qi Juyin's back. She dried the handkerchief as if she hadn't heard him. If Shan Zichuan fails, Qi Shuyu sighed, shedding bitter tears. Can you alone atone for the entire Qi clan? Everyone in the world will hate you. You altered my message. Oh, you. Qi Juyin smoothed out her handkerchief and looked past the scattered shadows of the window lattice, gazing out at the overlapping flowers and plants. After a moment's silence, she said, If Shan Zichuan fails, report to Chudu how I falsified your message and coerced my brother to write the letter. Kong Borjan is a smart man. He would rather kill only me to ensure your survival. Qi Shuyu's message to Chudu had been a fake. What had been delivered was something Qi Juyin had forced her older brother of common birth to write with a blade to his neck. But was there really nothing Qi Shuyu could do about it? He had to let it happen, hoping to leave the Qi clan a way out. If Shan Zichuan were to lose, Qi Shuyu could still hand over Qi Juyin in exchange for the lives of the entire clan. The moment Qi Juyin made up her mind to remain south of Tianfei Watchtower, she had ceased to be a daughter of the Qi clan. The freedom Qi Shuyu had given her applied only to the interests of the family. If she could no longer bring them honor and glory, she was no different from her good-for-nothing common brothers. Damn. Qi Juyin didn't stay long. She hung out the handkerchief to dry and withdrew from the room. Several of her brothers were waiting under the eaves, but none dared raise their heads to look at her. She took banisher from Qi Wei and ignored them too. As he followed Qi Juyin out of the courtyard, Qi Wei whispered, Lord Jiang should be here soon. Is the mistress ready? Qi Juyin asked. Qi Wei looked past her and opened his mouth but did not speak. Qi Juyin followed his gaze and saw the maid Hong Ying raise the curtain of a sedan. Hua Xiangyi had arrived and was lifting the hem of her skirt to step out. Qi Juyin didn't know what possessed her to move past Hong Ying and offer her arm instead. Wrapped in the refreshing scent of white flowers, Hua Xiangyi set a slender palm on Qi Juyin's arm, only belatedly realizing who supported her once her feet touched the ground. Well, hello. Wanting to say something but too tired to be eloquent, Qi Juyin blurted as her face fell on Hua Xiangyi, What a pretty flower. Hong Ying, standing off to the side, raised a hand to her lips and coughed. A slight blush stole over Hua Xiangyi's cheeks. She released her grip, meaning to shift her hand away, but for some reason, she changed her mind and left it on Qi Juyin's arm. The tea pavilion is ready. We'll invite Wan Xiao there when he arrives. There is a screen divider in the middle. Wan Xiao's wife can take a rest there, and we can let Ji Zhan take a look at her. You are the mistress, so I'll leave the arrangements to you. Jiang Qingshan is known for his sharp tongue in Juexi, so watch that he doesn't speak over you. No matter what, I still hold the military power here. Even if his tongue is made of silver, he won't be able to save Chudu unless he kills me. The upturned tip of Hua Xiangyi's embroidered shoe peeked from under her hem. She smoothed the pleats of her skirt and said with a smile, Never fear. I have my ways. Shan Zichuan grabbed a handful of Dancheng surplus grain and turned his gaze toward the rest of the granary. This granary has been in disrepair for years. Winter is around the corner, and it's been overcast and rainy for days on end. We can't continue to store the grain here. It will rot. Fei Sheng closed the oil paper umbrella and replied, That's what the gentlemen think too. But now's not a good time. Master, if we move the grain and the commoners of the city think we're taking it for ourselves, all our recent efforts will be wasted. The Duanzhou garrison troops had been stationed here for less than half a month, where they had been forced to be on their best behavior. Fortunately, Shan Zichuan had ample grain, so his men didn't have to go hungry. Although some private resentment simmered among the bottom ranks, there had been no incidents. Many of the common people of Dancheng had fled west, but in doing so, they had blocked Shen Zichuan's path ahead. There isn't much grain left in the city. Yao Wenyu's wheelchair, wet with rain, left tracks behind him wherever he went. The winter looks to be a cold one. Dancheng will need relief. Rather than transferring the grain from here to Cizhou and back, why not distribute the grain to the people here now? The grain in Dancheng was all stock left behind by the Pan clan. It was too much trouble to move the grain with wagons. Distributing the grain locally would not only allay the commoners' fears, but also save a batch of relief grain for winter. Zhongbo's grain reserves were limited. If they were forced to lay a long siege on Chudu, both parties would be playing a game of endurance. Jiang Wanxiao was on his way to Tidong, almost seized on this urge to the Yan clan to reconsider their allegiance and actually convince them. A few days ago, grain from several cities in Hezhou entered Chudu, and the training grounds at Mount Feng have already been converted into grain storage. The waterways in the south run directly to Hezhou. Master, Chudu means to fight a protracted war with us. It might look that way, but they're still waiting for Jiang Qingshan. Shen Zichuan let the rice steam through his fingers. The Tidong garrison troops are Chudu's lifeline. The Grand Secretariat and Xue Yanqing both know they can't stop us with Luo Mu's 50,000 thugs. In stockpiling their grain, they are staking everything on a single bet. Yao Wenyu opened his mouth to speak, then covered it and coughed instead. There's a draft in here, Shen Zichuan said. Fei Sheng, give my cloak to Yanzhuo. You can't stand this chilly wind either, master. Fei Sheng motioned for the guard at the door to step forward. Qiao Tianya anticipated that Mr. Yuanzhuo would forget to bring his own, so he sent someone to deliver it this morning before we stepped out. I've been waiting for Mr. Yuanzhuo to ask. Even after being wrapped in the cloak, Yao Wenyu's coughing did not subside. No one brought up the issue of seeing a physician to him anymore. Although he took his medicine on time, his cheeks were growing more and more hollow. Finally he managed. Jiang Wanxiao has arrived in Tidong. He was interrupted by a commotion outside. Tan Taihu entered with his blade at his waist, bowed to Shen Zichuan, and reported in a gruff voice. Your lordship, a messenger has arrived from Chudu. He says the court can't bear to see the people plunged into the abyss of misery, that they wish to converse with us. Dozens of students have been set out of the city gates and are waiting at a platform they built west of the Dancheng city walls. Your lordship, at this moment, we are strong, and the enemy is weak. What's there to discuss? Might as well get Shen Wei to write a declaration of war, and we can fight our way into Chudu and save ourselves the trouble. Wiping his hands, Shen Zichuan asked, Is there anyone we know among these people? Sun Xunyi is in the lead. The rest are all students of the Imperial College. Shen Zichuan only needed to think for a moment to understand the dangers involved in this gambit. Jiang Wanxiao has arrived in Tidong, Yao Wenyu continued, and the mistress will surely have a long talk with him. If we do not respond, we will look poor before Tidong. Anyway, a prolonged siege was never the ideal strategy. Clutching his handkerchief, he met Shen Zichuan's eyes. The opportunity has presented itself. Your lordship, I'll be back soon. In Tidong, the sun was shining brightly. Ribbons of steam rose from the tea pavilion. Hua Xiangyi sat primly at the table and served tea with spotless hands. Qi Zhuying gestured for Jiang Qingshan to sit. You've come a long way. This is merely to welcome you, so there's no need to be nervous. Please, take a seat. The travel-worn Jiang Qingshan had already changed his clothes in the side hall. Now, as he sat comfortably with his sleeves held together, he didn't refuse her hospitality. With a smile, he said, It is my undeserving honor to be able to drink a cup of tea brewed by the third lady. He addressed Hua Xiangyi by her old title. The implication was unmistakable. He did not regard Hua Xiangyi as the mistress of Tidong, but as the former master of Dichang. This one address widened the distance between them and made it clear he was not interested in having this conversation with her at all. Hua Xiangyi cradled her own cup and said softly, The journey is tiring, and your wife is expecting. It wouldn't be proper for you to stay at the relay station. I had them tidy up a courtyard earlier. If you don't mind, please stay here in our home. Her home was the Qi residence, where she ruled over all the affairs of the inner manor. No matter what Jiang Qingshan called her, she was the mistress of the Qi clan's house. Jiang Qingshan sipped his tea, putting a period on their first exchange. It was raining heavily in Dancheng. The whispering hush of the bamboo rose and fell. Sun Yu was waiting fretfully on the newly erected platform when he heard the melody of a flute weaving through the chorus of bamboo. He let out a soft exclamation and watched as an oil paper umbrella made its way through the rain along a winding stream. Yao Wenyu advanced up the boundary line between the two armies. The white donkey he sat on trod through the puddles. The hem of Yao Wenyu's green robe draped over his mount's pale flanks, while the scholar's pouch around his waist was the same as ever. Moving through the rain and mist, he looked just as if he had emerged, unchanged, from the past. "I left you in quite a hurry and did not get to bid you farewell." Yao Wenyu bowed from his seat in the saddle. "So here I am now, having received your invitation." Seeing Yao Wenyu bow from the back of the donkey, Sun Yu knew the rumors were true. His legs really were broken. A multitude of emotions flooded his chest, and he stood rooted in place, ears buzzing. Sun Yu sighed with great sorrow. Why subject yourself to such misery?" Chapter 276. Confrontation in the Rain. Why, indeed? Yao Wenyu had no reply to this. He had not come to answer the question of why he was doing this. He knew Chudu's intentions. Everyone in the world had their eyes on him, their admiration dissolving into sympathy. They wanted to look down on him in pity, as if losing his legs meant he had lost the courage to stand before others. It was much harder to live than to die. In the wake of that fateful day, Yao Wenyu had seen the future that lay before him. This wasn't the first time he had been on the receiving end of such gazes, and it wouldn't be the last. As long as he lived, he would have to face their pity. It was an agony he could share with no one else, no one at all. Rain dripping off the oil paper umbrella formed a curtain that concealed the green robe within. Yao Wenyu appeared so remote that he might as well have been sitting among the clouds. Even when he fell, he remained clean and untainted. There is one state in life that is unbearably elusive. Standing far away on the watchtower, Shan Zituan spoke to Qiao Tianya beside him. That is to be delighted not by external gains and saddened by personal losses. Footnote number 7. These are lines from the essay Yueyang Tower by Fan Zhongyan, a minister of the Northern Song dynasty. If a person can achieve such equanimity, he is not far from enlightenment. When I first met him, I thought he was such a person, but I later realized I was mistaken. To attain enlightenment was to be devoid of emotions, to be merciless even to oneself. Yao Wenyu couldn't do that. He held the people in his heart. He also held a certain person in his heart. He was a wanderer of the mortal world who only appeared far removed from the dust on the ground. Having spent his first 20 years carefree in traversing the land on a donkey, he wasn't aloof. He was living wholeheartedly. Qiao Tianya looked out at that thin smear of green, as if looking at a view of emerald willows and jade bamboo on the horizon. He set down his flute and took a swig of his wine, then answered as though intoxicated. "I understand him." The rain continued to fall. Yao Wenyu's voice was as clear and resonant as jade. "You need not be concerned on my behalf. From where I sit, Chudu is a trapped beast, exhausting the strength of 7 cities to battle to the death with our prefectural governor. It is an unwise strategy." "If Shan Zituan is sincere about his love of the people," Sun Yu replied, "he ought to have surrendered long ago instead of proclaiming himself governor. You laid siege to Dancheng, attempted to intimidate Chudu, and threw the people of the empire into panic. His secondary purpose today was to persuade the rebels to surrender." He took a step forward and spoke across the misty rain. "If Yuanzhua is willing to sway him to yield today, I am willing to vouch for him with my own life on the grounds of his benevolent deeds in Zhongbo alone." "The situation is clear, and the outcome is a foregone conclusion. Why continue deceiving yourselves?" Yao Wenyu replied. In order to keep the commoners in the capital from facing this catastrophe, his lordship had stayed put in Danchang and refused to mobilize his troops. In truth, 120,000 Zhongbo garrison troops are prepared and eager to advance. It will take only a day for them to march out and besiege Chengdu. As they say, attacking a walled city is a last resort, to be tried only when all other tactics have been exhausted. Footnote number 8. This is from The Art of War, Chapter 3, Planning an Attack, by Sun Tzu. If the girl emperor is willing to open the gates and surrender for the sake of the thousands of commoners in the city, I, too, will vouch for her with my life. You and I have been acquainted for many years. Why make such boasts to me? Zhongbo has only 20,000 soldiers who can be deployed, and Shen Sichuan is showing signs of exhaustion merely from guarding the Zizhou granary. Chazhou and Hezhou have surrendered to the empire. It's more than evident that he has lost the hearts of the people and is unable to regain their trust. Chengdu is guarded by the 7 cities, and Qidong is its shield, with 300,000 Qidong garrison troops, hardened warriors, every one of them. No one will accept Shen Sichuan's usurpation of the Li clan's empire. Your invasion of Dancheng has already sent refugees fleeing to our capital. Sun Yu pointed at Chengdu. Before the gates of Chengdu are all the people seeking to escape. From the walls, you can hear infants wailing at night and see widowed mothers selling their daughters during the day. If you are truly an army of righteousness, how can you turn a blind eye to their plight? Yao Wenyu remained silent. A student beside Sun Yu bowed to Yao Wenyu and cleared his throat. Not only that, Shen Sichuan revolted without cause and brought calamity down on Chengdu. Even if his army can breach the city, he will be hard-pressed to win over the masses that way. Her Majesty is the legitimate ruler of our empire in name and fact, the only rightful candidate for the throne. The clash of the two armies will result in countless casualties, so why not make peace today? As long as Zhongbo is sincere in their surrender, Her Majesty, wise and gracious, will surely not pursue the grave offense. They made the whole affair sound perfectly pleasant, but even if Kong Qiu himself had been here, he would not have been able to guarantee their safety after disarming, let alone Sun Yu. Yao Wenyu was about to speak when the wind came whistling through the rain, forcing him to cover his mouth and cough. Sun Yu could hardly stand to watch, but the student beside him thought he had gained the upper hand. Yuanzhuo's frailty bolstered him. He took another step forward and boldly raised his voice. The unpolished jade Yuanzhuo has always possessed an unrivaled reputation in Chengdu. Everyone knows you came from the Yao clan and studied under Secretariat Elder Hai. What a pity that you failed to live up to both your talent and your mentor's teachings. Instead, you've devoted yourself to serving the Shun clan, turning your back on the will of your forefathers. Yao Yuanzhuo, even an old steed may still hope to run 1,000 miles, yet you've given up and submitted to a treacherous rebel. I lament the waste of your talents, and even more, that the Secretariat Elder entrusted his legacy to the wrong man. Looking at your feebleness today, a far cry from the spirited presence you once possessed, I exhort you to recognize the error of your ways and turn back from this futile path. The audacity. Okay. Raindrops darkened the wooden railing and soaked Shen Sichuan's robes. He tucked the folding fan under his sleeves to keep it dry. From his place on the watchtower, he looked out at the green bamboo, but could only see part of Yao Wenyu's figure through the stalks. When Shen Sichuan had still been in Chengdu, he had said once to Xiao Chuye that, if pressed to choose, he would pick Xue Xiuzhuo over Yao Wenyu. Standing alone far above the mundane world, Yao Wenyu was not made for rolling in the muck. He was so good. So when pain had at last struck him, it had struck him a lifetime's worth. The students' morale soared. They crowded onto the platform, all trying to impart words of wisdom to Yao Wenyu. Yao Wenyu's coughing had subsided. His expression remained unchanged, as if he'd expected this. Shen Sichuan had no lack of capable wordsmiths under his command. Kong Ling, for instance, had been an especially eloquent master of debate as a student. Yet Shen Sichuan had still agreed to let Yao Wenyu go. As the friend who understood him best, he knew Yao Wenyu didn't need pity. Not one bit. Luomu set this trap hoping to kill Yuanzhuo. Shen Sichuan tilted his head slightly, his jade earring coldly reflecting the light. But he'd have to be worthy of it first. To belittle Yao and Yu was to belittle Shanzichuan. Right? I'm sorry. Just Many of the advisors under Shanzichuan's command possessed both integrity and ability. Yet Yao Wenyu had remained secure in his position at the top. 2 years ago, he had been a wretched figure as he fled the capital, but that was 2 years ago. Now, he was the premier advisor of Shanzichuan, the overlord of Zhongbua. The platform had become noisy. The students' voices blended into the heavy rain, buried under the rustling of bamboo. As the cool breeze blew past, Yao Wenyu moved aside the handkerchief covering his lips. "You advised me to realize the error of my ways and turn back from my path," he said. "But I would advise all of you to consider your own mistakes and seek the salvation at hand." Yao Wenyu's voice was clear and mellow, as if his earlier coughing was merely a short respite he took in the rain. "I ask you, Mr. Xunyi, why did my teacher work himself to exhaustion, then remonstrate with the emperor to his death?" "To deter lowly wretches and set right the hierarchy of the world," Sun Yu answered. As the wind rose, Yao Wenyu at last revealed his edge. "That cannot be further from the truth. My teacher thought of nothing but the people's welfare. He aimed for stability and always considered the will of the people. He put them first in everything he did, always regarding them as the foundation of the state. Now you are upsetting the hierarchy of the world and turning your back on the people for your own selfish interest to preserve your position in the imperial court. Cun Yi, Kong Boran, Xue Yanqing, how can any of you face my teacher ever again?" He had rarely looked so solemn, and his words were so sharp Cun Yu staggered back and rasped, "We—" Still perfectly composed, Yao Wenyu continued. "Let me ask you again. Of the 4 objectives my teacher strove for in life, root out the poison ailing the empire, return the fields to the farmers, secure the livelihoods of commoners, and rectify the hierarchy of society, which have you achieved?" Come on. I'm sorry, y'all. Sun Yu was beginning to lose steam. "The field taxes from Dancheng, Quancheng, Wucheng, and Dicheng have all been recovered, and the fields in those 4 cities have been returned to the people, which taxes reduced. For these cities, it is now a time of rest and recuperation. To make up for Quancheng's field taxes, the Hulian Marquis allowed the local gentry to extort their farmers. The fields have been returned, but they are now barren ground being passed off as fertile farmland. Migrants are still flowing out of the 4 cities in an upending stream. Suzhou is packed past its capacity. These so-called accomplishments are inconsequential measures. They do not strike at what's crucial. Even the grain you distribute as aid was graciously granted by our prefectural governor." I'm sorry, I'm being so bad this chapter. Sun Yu had never expected Yao Wenyu to make his case so harshly. His accusations regarding the Quancheng fields are all true. It was because of the rebel threat that they'd had to temporarily halt the investigation, and now it had become a blade in Yao Wenyu's hand. The student beside Sun Yu reacted swiftly. "What nonsense! You betrayed the sovereign and brought dishonor on your teacher. You are a useless man eking out a shameful existence in a wheelchair, gasping his last breaths. What have you done? What can you do?" The donkey under Yao Wenyu inched forward, and Yao Wenyu answered, "I am but a strategist. How can I overstep my authority?" The student broke out in laughter. "That's just an excuse. You've done nothing at all. Lord Xue denounced the nobles and held up the reign of Li. He is revered by all in Dancheng, Quancheng, and other cities. You question how these men could face the Secretariat Elder. But Yao Wenyu, it seems to me you are the one who's too ashamed to face your teacher." Yao Wenyu's umbrella swayed slightly. He laughed, too, but it was a laugh that left no mark. It vanished entirely once it faded, without a hint of glee. "One must perform the duties required of one's position. Is it not expected for you to advocate for the people when you live on the emperor's salary? I can compare to Xue Yanqing when it comes to administering Chudu and keeping the empire in balance. He is a minister, while I am but a strategist." His eyes dimmed. The twinkling starlight in them died out, leaving behind a heavy, pitch-black night. "My lord navigated these turbulent times among all manner of capable and ambitious men, First quashing the scourge of banditry in Chazhou and Suzhou, then sweeping the six prefectures clean of their sufferings. He established a thriving trade route between north and south and spared no effort to help Li Bei's armored cavalry stamp out the foreign threat. In 2 years, he has recovered lost lands within our own nation, reinforced our borders, and secured the livelihoods of the people. Under his leadership, tens of thousands of acres of fertile land in 3 prefectures have been opened to farming. Not a single pitch of barren land is left within their borders. He implemented the Yellow Register and recorded each household. He sought wise advice from those around him and drew virtuous talents from every region, never letting status or history cut short a great man's future. What's more, he boldly rode out at the front of the troops to defend the city gates of Duanzhou. The rain pattered on his umbrella like the urgent beat of battle drums. In assisting a virtuous lord, I am no more than ephemeral clouds in the sky, gathering and dispersing without hesitation. I can be without name, without virtue, without merit, but my master, Yao Wenyu, was as steady as a mountain, each word ringing clear, must shine in history for 1,000 autumns. Strategist. Strategists and ministers were both men who supported virtuous masters. Yao Wenyu belittled his own achievements to exalt Shen Zichuan because he was Shen Zichuan's strategist. He schemed for empire and reputation, not for himself, but for his master. With every word he spoke, he turned the question on everyone from Chudu. What has Li Jianqing done? If a master had no achievements to their name, it was a mark of their retainers' incompetence. Sun Yu struggled to push on. For all your eloquence, you can't hide the illegitimacy of Shen Zichuan's origins. His father, Shen Wei, failed the 6 prefectures. If he enters the city, everyone will have to pay their respects to that shameless traitor Shen Wei. And are Li Jianqing's origins legitimate? Yao Wenyu countered. How dare you? Seeing Yao Wenyu so calm, securely holding the upper hand, the students flushed with indignation. How dare you utter Her Majesty's honorable name? Yao Wenyu raised his voice over the rain. Who here can prove Li Jianqing's legitimacy? You? Yuanqing? You revere her as your lord. You kneel and prostrate yourselves before her. Yet you can't ensure her authenticity. Is this not the most ridiculous joke? Lord Xue has the late emperor's verification in writing. The students had been thrown into disarray, and they faltered. An auspicious omen descended from the heavens when Her Majesty was born. That can't be wrong. It can't be. You can't prove it. Yao Wenyu suppressed a cough. But I can. Sun Yu felt a chill come over him as he gazed at Yao Wenyu's fluttering green robe. All at once, he felt like the man before him was not his old acquaintance Yuan Zhuo, but an enemy from Zhongbo. Chapter 277. Clash. When Xue Yanqing escorted the heir apparent to the palace, he produced an endorsement from the late emperor as well as Prince Teen's personal seal, which he showed to the Grand Secretariat. Yao Wenyu brushed a finger lightly over his pale lips. But these 2 objects have no bearing on each other. Prince Teen's personal seal was not stamped on the endorsement itself. If these objects alone can prove that Li Jianqing is Prince Teen's daughter of lawful birth, then the calligraphy of ancient imperial family members in the study of my Yao Manor are all proof of sovereignty. Even as the chill spread through his limbs, Sun Yu knew he couldn't show any sign of weakness. All eyes were on this confrontation outside the city today. One wrong answer could doom Chudu forever. He composed himself before saying, When Her Majesty entered the palace, the Grand Secretariat carried out a public verification right there in the Great Hall. The Empress Dowager also confirmed that Her Majesty was of the Li clan's bloodline. The heavy rain pelted down on the oil paper umbrella, the noise like a handful of scattered beads. After the late emperor passed, the Li clan's bloodline fell into decline, said Yao Wenyu. The so-called public examination you speak of was based solely on the words of Xue Yanqing. The Empress Dowager lived alone deep in the palace, with eunuchs controlling her on the inside and sycophantic ministers coercing her on the outside. How can a word be believed? The question was a punch to Sun Yu's gut. He stumbled back and sputtered, Sycophantic. How can you say I'm a sycophantic minister? On the day of the public examination, the whole court of civil and military officials was present. If anyone dared to coerce the Empress, I'd have been the first to see his head roll. Very well. You are loyal. I admire you for that. Yao Wenyu pulled a letter from his sleeve pocket. I happen to have here a confidential letter from the Third Lady, recounting in detail the incident in which Han Cheng coerced the Empress Dowager using Di Cheng's faulty accounts, along with a personal letter between the Empress Dowager and the Third Lady referencing the same. It is stamped with the Empress Dowager's personal seal. The moment he held it aloft, the uproar on the platform drowned out even the sound of the rain. Sun Yu had never expected Yao Wenyu to have genuine proof. The chill that had prickled up his spine earlier became a numbing cold. It was not Zhongbo in peril today, but Chudu. Bracing himself against the edge of the nearest table, he said, The Third Lady has been away from Chudu for a long time. She was not waiting upon the Empress Dowager then. Her words, the Third Lady is the rightful minister of Qidong. Yao Wenyu retorted, relentless. If her words hold no weight, then why have Qidong's 300,000 soldiers not moved? Muffled thunder sounded overhead. Yao Wenyu released his grip and let the letter fall into a puddle. The Qi clan would risk their prestigious reputation of 100 years rather than send troops to aid the throne, because the one sitting on it today is not a sovereign of the Li clan at all. Xue Yanqing deliberately obfuscated the truth, calling a horse a deer. He deceived everyone in the imperial court and tried to pass off a brothel girl as an imperial heir. A brothel girl. You delude the people with rumors and lies. A student leveled a finger at Yao Wenyu and snapped. Her Majesty is the daughter of a farmer outside Chudu. She has long had a benevolent reputation among her neighbors. How gullible. There was no warmth in Yao Wenyu's eyes. Li Jianting has never once summoned her supposed adoptive parents since ascending the throne. If she is as benevolent and filial as you claim, would she be so indifferent to the parents who raised her? At these words, even the students on the platform staggered back and collapsed. Sun Yu had no chance of keeping his feet. The capital troops of Chudu whispered among themselves in horror. Dark clouds were pressing in toward the palace halls of Chudu. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. The sky seemed to split open, illuminating the upturned eaves with a glint like knives. The letter Yao Wenyu had produced had been swiftly copied and passed throughout the cities of the southwest. The embroidered uniformed guard still hiding in Chudu roved the streets and alleys. Gu Qingqing sat at a table in a tea house, watching the raindrops pelt the window paper. Li Tianting raised her head at the rumble of thunder. She could almost hear the pounding of the battle drums. She asked the nearly empty Mingli Hall, Has the Prince of Donglia deployed her troops? Feng Quan lit a stick of incense and replied, Soon. The soft rustle of cloth came from behind the screen. Ji Zhen sat straight-backed at the side of the small table, taking Liu Nyang's pulse through a handkerchief for the sake of propriety. The Qi clan has always raised loyal and chivalrous subjects, Jiang Qingshan said. The old marshal has an illustrious career of military achievements and has always been favored by the throne. But the empire is now in imminent danger, torn asunder by internal strife. It's time for the Qi clan to restore its position as the stalwart blade of the state. I'd advise you, Marshal, not to corrupt your family's righteous cause over matters of personal friendship. Revere your sovereign, and you will be lauded by all. The future glory of the Qi clan is right before your eyes. You are a formidable minister who has governed Juexi most capably. You are more familiar with civil administration than me. Qi Juyin sipped her tea. Since, as you say, it is a time of crisis for the empire, let's skip over these tired cliches. Steam wrapped its way around the tea pavilion. Jiang Qingshan laughed wryly. To exhort a soldier to honor and glory is indeed nothing but platitudes. You're right. I came here instead to share a few heartfelt words with you. He set down the teacup and looked at Qi Juyin. Marshal Qi, if the current emperor were incompetent, I would not have come. But now, the revitalization of our great Zhou is within reach. We need only eliminate the remaining internal threats, and the people will flourish in prosperity. He paused for a moment. The Xianda emperor didn't involve himself in court politics when he was on the throne. He turned a blind eye to the factions tussling for power in the court. The year Juexi was hit with a drought, I didn't have sufficient grain to distribute relief. I was at my wit's end and could only beg and borrow in haste, incurring a towering debt. It was Yan Qing who rushed to Chengdu overnight to implore the Grand Secretariat to help me. When Hua Xiqian wanted to have me killed, it was also Yan Qing who knelt before the Secretariat elder's door and pled with him to save my life. All these years, he ran all over the empire in his position as the chief supervising secretary of the Office of Scrutiny for Revenue and fought for the careers of capable local officials, going to great lengths to build up what they call the pragmatist faction today. His efforts have allowed our great Zhou to continue to struggle on after the reign of Tian Shan. Marshal, we dare not claim all the credit for ourselves, but in order to fight for a new dawn for this empire, we would gladly stake our lives for those of our families. Jiang Wanxiao was telling the truth. The corrupt administration of the latter years of Yongyi was firmly rooted in Chengdu, but the regions outside the capital had still done all they could to hold on. Jesse's current ability to bear the burdens of the Zhou Empire was not something that had been achieved overnight. It was a cornerstone that men like Jiang Qingshan had laid down over the past decade and more, at great cost. Since the first year of Xiandu, Yan Qing has taken every opportunity to exhort the imperial court to send capable ministers to Zhongbo to clean up the mess there. But in consideration of Hua Xiqian's power at the time, the Secretariat elder didn't dare act rashly, afraid it would endanger more officials of common backgrounds in the central administration. It was only when Hua Xiqian fell from grace in the 8th year of Xiandu that the Grand Secretariat finally agreed to transfer me to Zhongbo as Provincial Administration Commissioner. But by then it was too late. Not only were bandits running rampant in the 6 prefectures, the influence of the noble clans was too deeply rooted in Chengdu. Frustration seemed to overwhelm him. He couldn't help but bang his fist against the table, despondent. Venting a long sigh, he continued, "We had no troops and no power. So what were we to do? The Grand Secretariat spent half a year deliberating over my order of transfer alone." The light fragrance of tea rose into the air. He took a moment to compose himself before continuing. "I had already given up. It was Yan Qing who helped Her Majesty onto the throne and, with her help, relentlessly pursued the Dancheng field taxes. Marshal, if Her Majesty were merely another useless royal descendant like the late Emperor, then I would say let Shan Zichuan revolt as he wishes. But there is now light at the end of the tunnel." He fixed his gaze on Qi Juyin and said urgently, "When you requested to send troops to fight the Qingshu tribe at the start of the first year of Sheng Yin, a move that would assist Li Bei, we agreed because of the foreign threat, and we provided military salaries and provisions. It is no longer as it was during the reign of Xiandu, when the nation's generals had to beg for money in the capital. The case of moldy grain in Bianjuan Commandery prompted Lu Guangbai to desert, yet the Grand Secretariat never did heed the imperial censor's exhortations to strip the Lu clan of their noble title and rank. They wanted to give the court and Lu Guangbai a chance for everyone to start over. There will be no interference from the noble clans this time, only sincere cooperation between civil and military officials. The revitalization of our great Zhou is at hand." Every one of Jiang Wanxiao's words came from his heart. These were things others could not fathom or comprehend, or were not even willing to listen to. Officials like him were cogs in the machine that was the Zhou Empire. When spots of rust began to corrode the court, the nation relied on generation after generation of virtuous, talented men to keep it oiled and running. This responsibility did not fall on one person. In the early years, perhaps it was Qi Huilian. Later, it was Hailiang Yi. Now, it was Xue Xiuzhuo. These men differed fundamentally from the voices of the noble clans, even if their ideologies were in conflict or their philosophies contradictory. They did the practical work on behalf of the people. They were the last glimmer of hope for the survival of this old, decaying tree. Shan Zichuan introduced the yellow registry in the 6 prefectures of Zhongbo, but we have long since implemented such household registration in Juexi. Ever since I took up oversight of the 13 cities, the yamen throughout the region has been verifying these records every year. On my watch, no land has been lost. No fields have gone to waste. And trade at the port has thrived. If Shan Zichuan hadn't insisted on interfering, the port of Yongyi would not have closed this year." He took a breath. "The investigation into the 8 cities' field taxes was suspended only because Shan Zichuan was at our door. He proclaimed himself the prefectural governor of Zhongbo, and the regions of the east called him overlord. The noble clans were driven to extremes to save their hides. There was no choice but to stop the... Behind the screen, Liu Niang exclaimed softly. Jiang Qingshan came to an abrupt halt and rose slightly from his seat. Hong Ying stepped out from behind the screen and whispered in Hua Xiangyi's ear. Hua Xiangyi looked up at Jiang Qingshan. Your wife is greatly weakened after your arduous journey, and the child is at risk. She may need to stay here for a few days to recuperate in peace. Liu Niang had been in ill health since the reign of Xian De. Jiang Qingshan didn't doubt that what Hua Xiangyi said was true. Even as he poured his heart into his fervent persuasion, he was worried sick about Liu Niang. For a moment, he lost his voice. He could neither bring himself to go to her, nor sit back down and continue. Hanitaba, the mistress needs to take some medicine, Tijan said softly. What kind of medicine? Jiang Qingshan couldn't help but ask. She has a frail constitution. All the physicians she usually sees have been cautious with her prescriptions. I heard you have been married for several years, yet your mother still demands your wife attend her every day. Never mind before, Hua Xiangyi said, reproach creeping into her voice. But why is she required to do so now that she's with child? How can you ask this of her? These domestic affairs were a sore spot for Jiang Guanxiao. His mother had been widowed as a young woman, yet against all the odds, she had raised him to be a major official ruling a border region. The old matriarch couldn't be bribed with gold or precious treasures, nor did she form any social connections with the female kin of other court officials. She wholeheartedly wished for Jiang Qingshan to remain an uncorrupted official, but she was too strict in her management of the household, and especially harsh on Liu Niang. Qi Juyin hadn't planned to speak on this point. She had a multitude of domestic troubles herself that vexed her to no end. But then she felt a gentle nudge on her foot under the table. She sipped her tea, considering Hua Xiangyi's silent message. When she set down her cup, she said, Let's put aside these government affairs for now, since there's still no news from Chudu. Better get the mistress settled first. Skeptical, Jiang Qingshan said cautiously, About the deployment. I'll think on it, Qi Juyin said. You'll have your answer in 2 days. Fei Shi covered his head as he ran through the rain. He could hear the whispers all around him. Traitor, emperor, pretender. Chudu, with its centuries of history, teetered on the precipice in this rainstorm. He ran until his shoes were soaked. Someone knocked into him, sending him staggering. The well-heeled young marquis of the past was now simply dressed. After the Hulian marquis had taken to his bed, Fei Shi's disreputable friends no longer deigned to associate with him. The family's money had all gone to make up the field taxes. They couldn't afford the upkeep of their servants within the manor and had no choice but to dismiss them. Fei Shi had thought to continue his idle ways, but when he saw his elder sister Zhao Yue caring for her child, even after late nights spent on embroidery work for others, he realized his family was thoroughly broke. These days, he eked out a living writing letters for others. Fei Shi cursed as he picked up some letters he had dropped. Damn dog! Must be blind to bump into me! He wiped the rain off his face. Don't you know I used to... The man who'd bumped into him had fallen to the ground. Finding him strangely familiar, Fei Shi kicked him. Hey! The man jerked his head up, but he was so dirty his face was indistinguishable. He clapped his hands at Fei Shi and giggled. Young Marquis! Young Marquis! Fei Shi pocketed the papers. So you can see well enough now? That's me, all right. The lunatic was covered in filth and had only one shoe. Shaking his head slowly, he said, Young Marquis, looking for my elder brother. I'm not your elder fucking brother. Fei Shi yanked his hem away from the man's grasping hand, covering his nose at the man's stench. He flapped a hand to drive him off. Shoo, shoo! This lunatic bared his teeth in a grin and left, jumping around in the rainstorm and yelling at everyone he came across. Elder brother! My elder brother is a major official! A major official with a sword! What rotten luck! Fei Shi muttered, turning away. Yet he still found that voice familiar. He had only taken a few steps down the street when he spotted the run-down Han Manor through the curtain of rain and froze. The capital troops are passing through. Out of the way. Military boots sent water flying as the soldiers splashed through puddles on their run across the streets of Chudu. The entire city was on high alert, and the defensive weapons in the armory had all been moved to the top of the city wall. News that Sun Tzuan was about to attack the city had spread even wider than rumors about the girl emperor's origins. The soldier shoved Fei Shi aside. His face was still blank with shock as he turned his head. As stiff as a wooden statue. Han Jin! Yao Wenyu retreated unscathed from his verbal sparring with the Chudu scholars. He turned his donkey around, the slight angle of his oil paper umbrella allowing the rain to wet one side of the hem of his green robe. Still in shock, Sun Yu braced himself against the edge of the table and raised a hand as if to call out to Yuan Zhuo again. A soldier behind him soundlessly hoisted a bow. He gripped an arrow between his fingers and drew the bowstring all the way back. Amid the bamboo, raindrops fell like strings of beads off the rim of the oil paper umbrella. Yao Wenyu's breathing was slightly ragged. The handkerchief he clutched in his hand had long since been soaked red. Humiliated from the defeat, a student chased after him. Sun Tzuan wants to claim the empire so he can honor Shen Wei's name on the imperial altar. It is an act neither virtuous nor righteous. Even if I die, I will not kneel to him. The downpour drowned out the sound of Yao Wenyu's coughing. When he looked back, however, the corners of his tightly pursed lips lifted slightly. The umbrella slid to the ground. His hair was instantly soaked, but he had steel in his voice as he said, "We rose out of Zhongbo and have only ever spoken of Shen Wei's defeat as a disgrace. His lordship brought peace and stability to the land for the sake of all people. He will neither take a wife nor beget a son. What's more, he seeks to redress the injustices done in the reign of Yongyi and clear the names of the loyal officials lost in the fall of the Eastern Palace. You don't need to kneel. When the country is stable, the commoners' livelihoods have been restored, and the granaries everywhere are full to bursting, his lordship—" The twang of the bowstring sent up a spray of raindrops as the arrow leapt from the bow. In the blink of an eye, the sharp glint was before Yao Wenyu. A swift sword thrust down from the stalks of green bamboo, and amid the metallic clang as sword and arrow collided, Qiao Tianya landed on the ground. Sun Tzuan stood high up on the watchtower, gazing out toward Chudu. The wind swept his cloak up, sending it fluttering. Bits of ice and snow mixed with that torrential rain. One does not execute the messenger when two armies are in discussion, the prefectural governor said. Does Chudu think there is no one left in Zhongbo to stand up for them? Qiao Tianya slowly straightened and stood in front of Yao Wenyu, his eyes hidden behind locks of drenched hair. He nudged his sheath open with his thumb and barked, "Draw your blades!" Rainwater slid down the Imperial Army's armor. The glint of steel flashed throughout the bamboo forest. In Mingli Hall, the incense had burned out. Alrighty, everyone, that concludes the reading for today. I hope you guys enjoyed these chapters. Gonna go ahead and do some quick recapping of each chapter. So, of course, we are going to start with chapter 274, Unveil. So, in this one, I just love the way it started out, in all honesty. We have Xiao Chuye, finally going to Bai Yi. There's a feast that's being held, and Bai Yi is sucking up to him, right? He's like, hey, I'm presenting my daughter to you. She's lovely. Let's do this. Let's be bros. And meantime, and in between time, Xiao Chuye is sitting over here having thoughts of Sun Tzuan. I was like, see, this man is undeterred. He is focused on his love. He is not tempted by this woman. Ooh, yeah, whoever she is, she can go sit down. But then she especially can go sit down after she decides she's going to try to kill Xiao Zi'an because she's mad that she can't marry Hassan because Hassan is gone. And clearly that's the man she wanted to be with. Blah, blah, snore. But that's okay. Her assassination put that tribe right into Xiao Chuye's hands. And let me remember the name of this tribe one more time. Mengluo put them right into Xiao Chuye's hands because, number one, that was not Bai Yi's plan. He doesn't even have enough people to fight against Xiao Chuye and his army in the current moment. And so he's like, bro, I will kill my daughter right now. That was not part of the plan, my guy. I'll kill her. Of course, he wasn't able to do so, because he's a father. And Xiao Chuye showed mercy. he didn't kill her. He didn't have anyone else kill her. He was just like, all right, keep selling them camels or do whatever y'all supposed to do with the trade. Deal made. Perfect. Then we switch to a scene with Amur and the old wise man that had spoken to Hassan before, who actually never told Hassan that he was going to win, if y'all remember that part that I'm talking about. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting while Amur was speaking with him that even he realized that over time the war has never ceased, but the bodies keep piling high. Again, this is a constant thing that's happening. Revenge, 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 revenge. Bodies, bodies, blood, blood, piles, piles. It just never ends. So, well, we'll just see where things go. So then we move forward to Feng Quan. It's quite interesting to see. I'm still trying to absorb it, but Feng Quan wants Lanzhou dead so that Chudu can cling to death. Like it didn't say that he wanted him to be alive, to make Chudu stable again. It said Zhongbo must be defeated before the gates of Chudu. Only the demise of Shen Zichuan can the dynasty continue to linger on the verge of death. Just interesting. And I suppose that's technically the attendant that said that, but Feng Quan did not oppose what was said. And it just seems like whoever he is talking to, he had actually advised the man to do something differently when it came to spreading those pox, but they didn't listen. And killing Shen Zichuan is very difficult. Getting rid of him is not an easy feat. So anyway, moving to page 178, because I don't have a lot to say about this chapter. I guess I still just really need to absorb it a little bit, but it's clear, he already knew what his father wanted and he kind of just sent him on his way. Like not even having an ounce of sadness or anything. He was just like, I just sent my father on his way, let him do what he wanted to do. It's whatever. He wasn't a scorpion, so we couldn't tell him what to do. So I'm like, got it. So you're a scorpion, you're working with scorpions, okay, whatever. Anyway, at the end, he says, the attendant says, it's time to take your medicine. And I just wrote, what medicine? what medicine is he taking? So anyway, when we move to chapter 275, which was a little bit longer, it's just interesting to hear Luomu talk about Shen Zichuan and to Chen Zhan about how they could defeat him. And he's just got it in his mind that Shen Zichuan is showing so-called benevolence to the common people. For anyone whose first language is not English, when we say so-called, that's like calling someone out for being fake. Or just saying it's not genuine. So his so-called benevolence, it's like he's not really truly being benevolent. He's just doing it to win the hearts of the people. But excuse you, sir. The heart, not to say that a person who's faking benevolence can't keep faking benevolence, but from all of the actions that Shen Zichuan has taken, it's clear that he actually cares about the people. If he did not, he would have been and slipped up and done something that would actually harm the people, but benefit himself or benefit his team by this point. So you can go sit down somewhere. It's not so-called, it's genuine. Not only that, but we move forward. I don't like Luomu. I didn't like him before, but it's the fact that he's like, why don't we pull a page out of Shen Zichuan's book and be good to the common people as well. And his way to be good to the common folk is for Chudu to take in the young and strong refugees and have them potentially die. That's what. He's like, put them in the army. They hungry. They need food. They need somewhere to stay. I know we're overcrowded. Put them in the army and they can fight Shen Zichuan and they'll get their reward if they're not dead. And I'm just like, see, this is the difference between you and Shen Zichuan, the difference between all y'all nobles and Shen Zichuan. So, moving forward, we have several people advising Li Jianting that right now the war is not a war of swords and blood and guts, but it's a war of words, of winning the people's heart, and saying that they really need to not give Shen Zichuan a chance to rise in the people's hearts, because it would be very hurtful for her. And she's already in a rocky position with people questioning her legitimacy as a part of the Li family. And so Luomu wants to trap Yao Wenyu to have to speak up for Shen Zichuan, essentially, to slander him, and to even probably, I'm sure, slander Yao Wenyu for being a traitor and everything, to bring out Yao Wenyu so that he can suffer a humiliation in front of all of his peers and the people that he had once known. He's hoping that this little confrontation will embarrass Yao Wenyu, and any of the soldiers that go with Yao Wenyu, they will be incensed to attack these innocent people. That's all they are. These scholars, they are innocent people. So he's hoping that Shen Zichuan's people will, soldiers will attack these unarmed people and then put a foul taste in the common people's mouth. So I say, it's not a war of words. This is a war of pride. That's all I've been hearing this whole time. It's a war of revenge and a war of pride. Who wants to own what land? And yes, even in a way, I am putting Shen Zichuan in that. Who wants to own what land? Who wants to own what territory? Who wants to look good in people's eyes? Who is trying to bring who down by doing this, by doing that? It's ridiculous. This is a war of pride. Pride goes before a fall. So we'll see who's truly being prideful. Anyway, Xue Shuzuo doesn't like this plan. And it's quite interesting because when he says he doesn't agree, Li Jianting is looking at him with a weird look. And then we have a flashback where she's talking to Feng Quan, and it's like, hey, who are you really? And he reveals his identity to her. Though it's like, to sell a lie, you got to sprinkle in some truth. So he's saying that Xiao Chengbi is his uncle, but Xiao Chengbi is his father. Oh no. But anyway, at least that's what it was saying before, unless that was a lie. Shoot, I don't know. No, it's definitely his father. So he's basically told her most of his origin. So she already knows about everything. And she was like, I'm the only one who can redress the grievances from before. But I mean, Xiao Chengbi's dead now, so whatever. But it's clear that Jianting has some reservations about Xue Shuzuo and why it is that he is watching her so closely. She's very concerned about this. And so she's asking Feng Quan about it. Then we move forward. And we have Qi Shiyu, which I hate saying his name, by the way. Shiyu. Qi Shiyu. That's not very easy. But I don't like this man. I mean, he didn't already, basically disown Qi Juyin. But I think the thing that's just more upsetting to me is going to page 187 when it says, the moment Qi Juyin made up her mind to remain south of Tianfei Watchtower, she had ceased to be a daughter of the Qi clan. So as soon as she just made one decision that you did not agree with, you automatically disowned her. And the freedoms that he had given her were only in interest of the family. And it doesn't say the time frame for that. It even says, if she can no longer bring them honor and glory, she wasn't different from her good-for-nothing brothers. So it's kind of like you raised your daughter with this in mind from the very beginning. I'm raising someone who has to bring honor to this family and do things the way that I would want them done, or she's a worthless piece of shit, basically. And he's willing to sacrifice her in order to keep the rest of the clan safe. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong for him to sacrifice her, but it's the fact that when we're getting this POV, there isn't even an ounce of care or love anywhere in there. He's just like, you unfilial daughter, and he'll kill her in order to protect everyone else. I mean, I guess it's kind of the same thing that happened with Bayir and his daughter Uya. Except with Uya, the girl was literally trying to kill the man that they were trying to partner with. It just, in this case, Qi Juyin has just cause to betray Chudu. Whatever. We shall see. So then we move forward towards the closer to the final scenes. And they have a lot of grain, extra grain, surplus grain in Dancheng. But winter is coming, and oh, what a surprise! It's been raining a lot. And this rain is going to cause the grain to rot. But it doesn't seem like it's a good time to actually move it, because if they move it, then it may look bad on the army, as if they're trying to take the grain for themselves. That's not actually what would be the case, but whatever. So Yao Wenyu is like, how about we just distribute it out to the people here right now, Go ahead and do that. Then we learned that Luo Mu actually convinced the Yan clan to switch sides for now. They're waiting to see what Jiang Qingshan says. I'm waiting to see what Jiang Qingshan says. Speaking of the Yan clan and that whole conversation, because it was Yao Wenyu that, said something first, dude, I'm not liking what I'm hearing about his health. Hearing that his cheeks are getting more hollow, he's clearly not doing well. The last time the man was coughing up blood and everything. So I think I'm just going to resign myself to the belief that he's going to die. This is not a spoiler. I have not read ahead. This is my first time reading. I have no idea. This is me just preparing myself that he is going to die, just like I prepared myself for Xiao Fangshu to die, even though I ended up crying for 10 minutes or so at the end of that chapter, which I'm still so sorry about that, but it was, oof. So anyway, sigh. But one thing I will say, while Luo Mu thinks he's setting up a trap for Yao Wenyu, I will say that as soon as Tan Tai Hu told them, like, hey, these scholars in Sun Yu are out there, Sun Chun Yu are out there, Yao Wenyu didn't even bat an eye. He was like, oh, look, an opportunity. Yay, let me go. So whatever Luo Mu thinks it is that he's about to accomplish, I feel like Yao Wenyu is about to completely trample on that. So anyway, y'all, oh, I'm so sorry. When we moved to chapter 276, which, by the way, please don't ask me how, but I read the first 2 chapters and then I had to stop for the night and came back and I accidentally read chapter 277 first. How I do that? No idea. So then when I realized my mistake after I was already done, I had to go back and read chapter 276. So I guess y'all are getting an extra chapter. But y'all, so far, because this volume has been very good, I think my favorite chapter is chapter 276. And you know what? I like Yao Wenyu. I remember when I was just like, he's just there, it's sad. He broke his legs, whatever. But I wasn't really feeling anything for him. Even in his scenario, I felt a little sad, but it wasn't like deep, right? But as time has gone on, I've come to appreciate him a little more. But this chapter, oh my God. He has won me over. Completely, 100%. Not like I'm infatuated. I love him and like I do Lu Guangbai or Xiao Tianya, but I love him. He's amazing. He's awesome. So let's just go ahead when we get into this chapter. First off, we start with, of course, Yao Wenyu is there. He has no reply at the moment, and we're moving to Shen Zichuan and Xiao Tianya, in which Shen Zichuan is talking about enlightenment and how he had always thought that Yao Wenyu was the one that was enlightened, that he didn't have any attachments, essentially. And he was like, oh, I realized that I was wrong. And I just wanted to bring this to the forefront for a moment, talking about enlightenment, because when someone truly attains that, they are devoid of emotions, merciless even to themselves. They don't have any of these attachments to the world. And it's just quite interesting. Now, this, I do just want to go ahead and say right now, this isn't me speaking out against any religion or way of life or culture or anything like that. I'm specifically just bringing forth my personal opinion with the knowledge that I have. Okay. So for me, when it comes to enlightenment, I always kind of feel like it's the opposite when they say that people, who are enlightened are the ones who have detached themselves from the world. They don't have the worries and all of those things. But I feel like it's like that's not enlightenment. I feel like it's so far from enlightenment. Like people are detaching themselves from what makes them human. And I don't know. I just can't get behind that. Correct me if there are some things that I am missing, but it's going against human nature to remove yourself from the cares of the world. We naturally care, we naturally love, we naturally have worries and anxieties and all those kinds of things. Not to mention, for the definition of being for enlightened, it is to be freed from ignorance and misinformation. And so when I think of enlightenment, to me, that does not erase the emotion. It erases any misunderstanding. It erases here, ignorance. It erases the lack of knowledge. You have the knowledge. Now, what do you do with that knowledge? It is based in the full comprehension of something. And so I just always think that's interesting. Anyway, going forward, because it's not really relevant to the plot, I just wanted to speak on that for a second. So we have Sun Yu, he's trying to plead his case to get Yao Wenyu to speak to Shen Zichuan to surrender. And he's like, I'll stake my life on it. You're going to be just fine. Which, first off, did Li Jianting tell you that? Who told you that? That if they surrender, ain't nothing going to happen, like they'll be just fine. Mercy will be shown. Who told you that? Or are you just putting that out there? Because if so, you can't just do that. Okay? So then, of course, Yao Wenyu turns it around on him. And he was like, okay, well, have her surrender. And we'll show her mercy. Now what? So I want to go to y'all. This chapter made me want to hop into the book and straight beat up some scholars, because the audacity of this no-name scholar who on page 198 is, first off, all he did was see Yao Wenyu cough and he became emboldened. Like, oh my gosh, he's coughing. So what? You think just because he has to sit in a wheelchair or he's sitting on a donkey, he can't stand up, that somehow means his brain doesn't function as it did before? Like, I'm so confused. Y'all are scholars. Y'all quip with the brain, feeding words to the mouth, not with swords and stuff. So how dare you have the audacity to bring up his feebleness, like as if, number one, as if it's his fault, as if him turning over to Shen Zichuan's side is the reason he's like that. This happened. They don't know this, but this happened because of the man that's sitting behind y'all walls. Okay? Xiu Zhuo. Xue Zhuo. But regardless, it's like him sitting there and not being able to stand on his two legs like you guys does not make him worth less than you. I just think it's absolutely ridiculous, that even Luo Mu was like, oh my gosh, let's set up this plan. I mean, which we get it. It's a pride thing. But yeah, let's set up this plan to completely demolish his pride because he can't stand up. His brain still functions the same, but he can't stand up. How humiliating. And, it's just interesting to me as well to hear other people saying, you failed to live up to your teacher's teachings. He wasted his time on you. And it's like, who told you that he failed? Did Hailiang Yi tell you that Yuanzhuo failed? Because if he did not, then all the rest of you can shut your mouths. Because who was close to Hailiang Yi? Who learned under his tutelage? It was Yao Wenyu. So Yao Wenyu not only knows his teachings that everyone else can hear, he also knows where Hailiang Yi's priorities are, what it is that Hailiang Yi wants to establish and to take care of. He knows these things. Y'all just know that he's out there teaching 2 + 2 = 4, but you don't know that behind closed doors, he may possibly be telling Yao Wenyu, yes, 2 + 2 = 4, but that does not mean that's the only way that you can ever get to the number 4 with 2 other numbers. So the audacity for them to say that, he has let down, like he has failed to live up to his talent and his mentor's teachings. You don't know what his teacher was teaching him. So anyway, going forward, we have, of course, Shen Zichuan says that Luo Mu wants to kill Yuanzhuo. And I was like, sir, you absolutely not. But of course, he was like, he would have to be worthy first. So obviously, they're going to protect him. But I love when we get to the bottom of page 199, when, of course, the guy was like, you need to, let me see. How exactly did he say it? Basically, you need to repent and turn from your wicked ways. Oh my gosh. I just absolutely love the way Yao Yu worded it when he said, "You advise me to realize the error of my ways and turn back from my path. But I advise you all of you to consider your own mistakes and seek the salvation at hand." I think it's the seek the salvation at hand part that just had me like, because he's like, yeah, Shen Zichuan, like not speaking in a religious sense, but he is your salvation. Y'all sitting here arguing for someone who's sitting on the throne. She just sitting and look pretty. Shen Zichuan is out here making moves, okay? So figure it out. Then we move forward again, going back to Hai Liang Yi, when Yuan Zhuo was like, Cun Xunyu, you tell me, what was Hai Liang Yi's focus? And so, of course, Sun Yu said what he said, and Yuan Zhuo was like, wrong, totally wrong. And I loved this moment because, again, it just really showed y'all are hearing the things that Hai Liang Yi has been projecting in meetings and teachings, sessions in the public. But let Yao Yu school y'all on what his priorities actually were. Okay? And so, of course, his main priority was the people's welfare. He always wanted the people to be in good standing. That is what was the most important thing to him. Not who was sitting on the throne. Okay? Not to deter, as Sun Yu said, lowly wretches and set right the hierarchy of the world. I never got that vibe from Hai Liang Yi ever either. And so I just love it when he's like, okay, let me ask you. Here are the 4 things my teacher strove for in his life. Since y'all think y'all know Hai Liang Yi so well, let me tell you. He wanted to root out the poison in the empire that was causing turmoil, ailing the empire. He wanted to return the fields to the farmers, which was taken by the poisoners. He wanted to secure the livelihoods of the farmers, which was being messed with because of the poisoners, and to rectify the hierarchy of society, which is diluted because of the poisoners of the empire. Oh, and reduce taxes. So you tell me, have any of y'all done that? These are his goals, okay? And then, of course, Sun Yu is like, oh, well, this is what we've done, because he's like, what have y'all achieved? And so Sun Yu is spouting this stuff off. And Yao Yu basically goes to tell him at the end of the day, you had someone extorting from farmers, and then, yeah, the land had to be given back, but the land was trash by that point. So it didn't really matter that the land was given back. Now they have to try to nurse it back to health, or it's just forever barren. It ain't fertile anymore. Not only that, the city, Suzhou, is overflowing. There are too many people there. So all of these so-called accomplishments you're talking about, they're empty accomplishments. And not only that, the grain that you distributed to aid the people when y'all was having these grain issues of getting food out to everyone, where did it come from? My prefectural governor. So, what have you accomplished? Nothing. I'm sorry. I just say, Yao Yu was pulling out all the stops here, and I was just genuinely mind blown by it, okay? And then on page 200, I feel like I'm talking about every single page, but just going through this chapter, again, when someone was like, okay, well, what have you done? Xue Shujuo has done this and this and this and that. And I love, I'm going to try to say this without rambling, that Yao Yu, he refused to fall into the trap of comparison. Because in this moment, again, like he said, comparing a strategist to a minister, 2 completely different fields. This isn't even apples to oranges. This is apples to potatoes, okay? It's not like Yao Yu is a minister. It's not like he had to be concerned with the certain things that Xue Shujuo had to be concerned with, that Xue Shujuo had to actually put things into action to deal with. That's not his goal, that's not his task. His task is to think things through, to strategize, to consult with Shen Zichuan and get other people to put things in action. So technically, anything that anyone else has done at the behest of Shen Zichuan, of their prefectural governor, Yao Wenyu has done. Because Yao Wenyu has set all of this into motion because he is the strategist. So you can still go sit down somewhere with you trying to do the comparison of the apples to the potatoes. At the end of the day, the apples, Yao Wenyu, are amazing. And then he even goes on further to be like, hey, let me ask you this. What has Li Jianting done? Nothing. All she has done is sat and got some teaching while all of y'all debate on whether or not she should take the throne, and she has looked pretty. Meanwhile, Shen Zichuan, Shen Lanzhou, our prefectural governor, before he was even bestowed the title of prefectural governor, was already making moves to help people, to get things back in order. And then it felt only right to give him the role as prefectural governor. All Li Jianting has done is sit there and learn while people question her legitimacy and then finally decide, okay, she's legit. Let's go ahead and put her up there. So again, when I say that I loved this chapter, this is my favorite chapter in the series. And it's funny because the end of this chapter gets us right at the halfway point. There are 411 pages, but page 411 barely has any, no, it goes all the way down. 411 pages, and that ends on page 204. Boom. So then, I'm sorry if I talk so long, y'all. Y'all can skip if y'all want, Chapter 277 was just even better. Well, not even better, but just the icing on the cake, right? Clash. We have Yao Wenyu again coming with the receipts. This man is pulling out all the stops and he ain't letting nobody deter him. And he even goes as far when people are like, oh my gosh, how can you speak bad about Her Majesty? She cares for the people. She's benevolent. He was like, then where are her parents? If she's so benevolent, why haven't her parents been brought here? Why aren't they living good? Where are they? Why is she being so indifferent to the people that raised her? And they ain't had nothing to say to that. And then moving forward some more, we switch scenes finally so I can calm down in my excitement. But of course, we have Jiang Qingshan. We get it. You want to share your story of all that Xue Yanqing has done for you in the midst of the struggles in society that were happening and how he helped you with this and he helped you with that. And things have been resolved because Xue Yanqing, Xue Yanqing, Xue Yanqing. We get it. We get it. We get it. And so you really are loyal to this man, loyal to Chudu. I get it. I get it. I guess that's all I can say. And yeah, sure, you can say that it's Lanzhou's fault that some things got paused. I mean, that worked in his favor. So it is what it is. But even with the whole fuel tax issue getting paused, still what Yao Wenyu said, when it comes to the resolution, it still doesn't really help anything. So anyway, did I get it wrong before, y'all? Please tell me for anyone who's like binging the chapters at once, or if you just remember, I could have sworn in previous chapters or the last reading when it mentioned Jiang Qingshan's wife that she had the baby. But now here it's saying like she hasn't had the baby. In fact, she and the baby are in trouble. So she has not had the baby? Okay. All right. Anyway, moving forward to the next scene. Feisher, Han Jin, the point? That's literally all my note says because it was such a small segment and we don't know what's coming from that. So I guess we'll see. Yes? Anyway, when we move to the end of this chapter, I love that, someone was like, there's no way in the world we're finna kneel to Shen Zichuan or kneel to Shen Wei because he's gonna honor his father in the imperial altar. And Yao Wenyu was like, yeah, even Shen Zichuan has spoken against his very own father, so that's not even a thing you have to worry about. But the thing that I loved the most was that on page 215, he said, you don't need to kneel. Because in the previous chapter, it was mentioned that they're kneeling to Li Jianting and this and that. But he was like, oh, actually, yes. Literally on the last page, he says, oh, that's funny. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I'm sorry. On the last page of this chapter, in comparison to the last page of the previous chapter that I'm about to compare, he says, you revere her as your Lord. You kneel and prostrate yourselves before her, yet you can't assure her authenticity. But here he says, you don't need to kneel. Our lordship, he's brought peace and stability for the land, for the people. Anyone that has been brought under his tutelage from Chudu has been treated with grace, honor, and respect. And he wants to, clear the names of loyal officials from the whole Eastern Palace thing. You don't need to kneel. That's not this kind of relationship. Like, that's not what this is. All he's trying to do is restore to restore the land. That's it. And maybe something else, but he got cut off because someone decided they wanted to try to kill him. But Shan Zichuan and Qiao Tianya said, So now that I have talked you guys' ears off, because these notes started at 1 hour and 17 minutes and it is now 1 hour and 15 minutes. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go so that I can go take a break and read something else for fun. I hope you guys enjoyed these chapters. Please let me know your thoughts and reactions in the comments section. I cannot wait to hear how y'all felt about these chapters. Please tell me. Okay, I'm sorry. Have a good day and or night, and well, I'm Neiman.